Chris, as my fellow Catholic, I have a lot of opinions on this, but let's start with you. How are you seeing this tension building, this escalation between Pope Leo and President Trump?
It's completely nuts. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. President Trump should let the Pope be the Pope and the Pope talk about what the Pope wants to talk about, and President Trump should be President of the United States and not pick fights with the Pope, which I believe President Trump did. And also, I don't think that the Pope is supposed to be a crime fighter. You know, he's not, I know he wears unusual clothing, but he's not Batman, he's not a superhero, and he's not out there being a crime fighter. And when President Trump says that he's soft on crime, you know, I think the Vatican is probably fairly crime-free, and that's his domain when it comes to crime. But President Trump, you know, pick a fight with Eric Swalwell, not the Pope.
Yeah, Jason, I agree with Chris. I think, you know, we've seen popes in the past take stance on wars. For example, Pope John Paul II, he was critical and opposed the war in Iraq. He said no to war. I mean, this is not the first time we've seen popes speak out on this, and they are moral leaders. They're not politicians. How do you think this is playing out, and do you think there could be a chance that it could reconcile both parties here?
Well, I don't think there's a need. I kind of agree with Chris here. I don't think there's a need to necessarily reconcile, but at the same time, I think that the Pope can say what the Pope says, and like you said, he is a moral leader. He is someone who is, I would expect, would always be against war. I would be, you know, it would be eyebrow raising to see a Pope say, hey, bomb that country. I've been full support.
Excuse me, the Crusades called. They'd like their
and that
back.
was really problematic.
And it really divided the church. I mean, it created the schism in the church where then you had the popes heading off to Avignon, France. It was a disaster. I do want to say something. I was speaking to several priests today, just getting their feedback. And so the way the Pope is supposed to present this is literally you lay out these moral principles of what a just war would be, which would be reasonable success. One, it would be proportional use of force. And third, it would have to be a clear and imminent threat, which is, I think, where there's a disagreement between the Pope and the president. But they're not supposed to necessarily tell civil authorities what to do. They lay out these principles, and then the civil authorities are there to judge. You know, Tiana, I think that did the Pope go too far, you know, or do you think he had to make these make this conversation or talk about the fact that, look, we don't want this war to get worse?
I mean, look, I'm not a Catholic, but I am a Christian. I'm also a student of history. And I know the last time a pope tried to interfere this severely with matters of state, you end up having Henry VIII breaking with the Church of Rome, right? Because he wants his divorce, and that's the beginning of the Anglican Church and much of what we see here in America today, right? And so, given to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Like, I do think Trump, it's Donald Trump, right? We bought the ticket, we take the ride. He cares about what people say about his policies. But, like, he doesn't have to care.
I do think that I would love to see a constructive, they're both very smart men. I would love to see a constructive conversation between the Pope and President Trump. I think they could actually agree more on things than they disagree. So watching this fight, at least for me, I hate it. I wish we could get past this and know that, you know, the Pope is trying to, he has to lead his flock as President Trump, has to defend America. Tony.
So, by the way, I'm not Catholic either, but I do like pointy hats, just saying. And with that point, so, no, it is. But one of the points I want to make, you mentioned John Paul II. John Paul II played a key role in a war, the Cold War.
Yeah, the Cold War, yeah.
So one of the things I think we tend to forget is that there are just wars, and I think Chris was going to probably talk about that in a second, too. But he did take an active role to help end the Soviet Union, the evil empire. Right. So there are political roles which I think are appropriate in modern combat. Right. I don't believe this Pope should be speaking out against going after an Islamic State which has vowed to end Western civilization.
I'd like the Pope to talk about the Christian persecutions in Nigeria and other African countries. I think that would be important for him to do.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.